excited about you hosting the next session, and I'd love to hand this over to you, Eileen, for our area on mentoring, and it's in your hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a complete honor, and I'm really excited to be the moderator of discussion with some people who have so much value to bring to, I think, not just the patients listening, but the people that are also interested in helping patients get more involved in research as well as developing programs. So we are here today to talk about mentoring and being mentored and discovering the support available for patients. The panelists here today will share their experiences related to being patient partners themselves and to either have been mentored or being mentors themselves. And all of our bios are online, which you can read about us, but we will talk a little bit about ourselves. And remember, I'm sure by now, third session, put your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, because we won't be able to keep as close an eye on that one. All right, thank you so much. And now I'm going to ask each speaker to say a little bit about themselves and the topic of the hour. Janice, can I get you to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name is Janice Tufte, and I'm really excited to be here today. And we've heard a few other people previously talk about some of their involvements or sort of mentoring activities that they've been involved with. But I really saw a need for mentoring when I first became a patient partner. I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I'm a PCORI ambassador. And I've worked locally on research projects to internationally. And when I first got involved, I can say it was really a mystery to me. The first science meeting I was at was with medical anthropologists, clinicians, researchers, other biostatisticians, and another patient partner and I. And we really realized, whoa, we don't know what they're talking about in this meeting, right? All the acronyms, which we've seen a few times in chat. And so, which is just second language for them. And we did take the city training, the IRB training, which is mandatory and for some research in the United States. And that helped us to ground on some of the words, but we found it very beneficial to have somebody work with us a half hour before each meeting for months, actually, before we could become acclimated enough to really be able to contribute meaningfully. And so that was one, I would consider her our mentor, that program officer. And then about a year ago, a few of us started mentioning, we see that there's a lot of individuals that would like a mentor. And so we thought, hey, we should start something, something formal where patients that would like to be more engaged in research and quality improvement, where they could go to find resources. So that's one thing we're kind of hoping will happen. Yeah, thank you for putting that IRB in their institutional review board. And so, I also myself, I'm working on one with what's called the Patient Revolution. If you've heard of Victor Montori in Mayo, he has cohorts right now where you develop your own project. And so I'm going to be developing something like that. But when I first was on one committee, I just want to comment, I did have a patient partner mentor who was a clinician who really helped me. It was in guidelines, and that was a whole nother world above and beyond, or whatever, equal to research, but a whole different new language acronym. So they assigned an individual to me, so I felt very comfortable writing to that clinician and whenever I had questions. So I just want to say mentors can be very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree with a lot of what you just said there. Now I am going to pass it off to Laurie and Anna to talk about their mentorship programs together.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Eileen. And I'll just talk for half the time and then I'm going to pass it on to Anna. So my name is Laurie Proulx. I've lived with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis since I was 14 years old. So that sort of brings over 30 years of lived experience through, school, as a young adult, navigating relationships, pregnancy, parenting. And the list goes on, right? Just like all of our sort of experiences of all the people attending. So in my 20s, I had kind of gotten involved as like an advocate, I guess, of sorts with a community group called the Canadian Arthritis Patient Alliance, or CAPA for short. And it was through this group, and I'm still involved with CAPA, by the way, but it was through this group that I was introduced to the Canadian Arthritis Network, which was a network that was established for arthritis research in Canada that really introduced me to the idea of a patient partner. I really had, I'll be honest, like I had no clue whatsoever. I have like a business background, like I have, so I work in the world of human resources and that sort of thing. So all of this was so new, and just, I felt like a bit of a fish out of water. So there, though, I got involved in a lot of individual projects, and I just found it like challenging to kind of pop into this world. It was this whole realm that I guess I had never been used to. But I guess because I kind of came up through CAPA, I was being mentored and just supported generally through my involvement with the patient partners there, because it's a grassroots and patient-led and managed organization. So I felt like really privileged, right, to be able to have had this group informally for me. And honestly, so many involved with CAPA are still, I consider, my mentors, or someone I put friend tours, in a lot of ways. And I guess just having that sense of community really meant a lot and made a lot of difference to me, not just with the research lingo, but supporting me to speak up when maybe I was worried or concerned or scared even to do so. So yeah, I've been involved with CAPA, as I said, and today I work, very part-time basis for CAPA. As a managing director. So through my involvement there, I developed the semblance of a program sort of to introduce people to patient engagement and research. So perhaps they didn't quite feel, or they had a bit more formal support. They had training. So the PIRA modules that were discussed prior to that, and I know Eileen, you've been involved in that as well. They had taken those courses online, but they were also supported by a community around them. And then we also match them up with research projects, because we get like a lot of requests to be involved way beyond any of the capacity that we might have as a small grassroots organization. So that being said, we graduated, so to speak, 6 patient partners who've been matched to upwards of like 20 projects at this point. And we're launching sort of part 2 to that, which is offering another introductory program using the PIRA modules again, as well as expanding on that to offer intermediate to advanced training. And really, we want the community to tell us what they need and want to learn about. So I'll put a little plug in about that the recruitment notice is out for that. Deadline to apply is the end of this month, so September 30th. So it's sort of timely that I'm here talking to you. And so I'll pass it with that in mind to Anna, who we were really fortunate was one of the 6 people that became involved.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Samson, and I live with ankylosing spondylitis and fibromyalgia. So I've lived with chronic pain since I was a teen, and I'm in my 20s now. I started by initially just sharing my experience with chronic pain on social media and just, sharing what I'm going through, the sorts of experiences I'm having in healthcare, and what being a young person with a disability looks like. And through social media, I got connected with CAPA and Laurie, and I was introduced to the world of being a patient partner and patient engagement in research. And I will be honest, I was really overwhelmed at first. I didn't really know what it was about because, again, there aren't very many formal training programs about it. So I was told about the program that Laurie was referring to, and I immediately wanted to do that because just with what I was doing on social media, my whole thing was that I wanted to use my lived experience to bring about change or at least improve things. And being introduced to this training program, that seemed like a very practical way for me to be able to do that beyond just like social media. So I joined this, and I learned a lot. I had no knowledge prior to this about what research is like, what being part of a research team is like, and I was really intimidated because I bring my lived experience to the table, but there's these researchers with all their qualifications, and that can be really intimidating. But through the para modules and with the guidance from this training program, I felt a lot more equipped to join these research teams because I learned so much, and I felt like I could meaningfully contribute what I've learned through my lived experience. And having Laurie there as a mentor, to know that I can come to her with questions, or even if I just need support. And especially once you've gone through the modules, you can kind of feel confused about, what are the next steps? Like, okay, I've done the modules now, but what does that mean? So having the training programs being connected with research projects after the fact was very helpful, because it kept that knowledge sharp and fresh. And most importantly, I felt like the research projects that us patient partners in training were being connected with were very relevant to our experiences and what we were open to contributing to. So I felt like it was very tailored towards us, and the support felt very specific, and it was really helpful. And I'm just so thankful for these programs.
I can definitely relate a lot to what you have said there, as somebody who got into research through the social media world. So I think we've got quite a diverse group of people here discussing this topic. And now I'm going to hand it off to Amy. I know we all know her by now because she's been talking all day. But Amy, can you give some of your input?
Just briefly, the others have covered it so well. I just wanted to say that a mentor is for many different things. So you'll never have one mentor for your whole life. And it's really important to know that, because people have weaknesses and strengths. And if you put them on a pedestal because they were so awesome with their help, and then you find out in another area of life, they're not very awesome. Sometimes that can be a letdown. And so don't let that put you off. Remember the good things and celebrate them. And then the other thing is, I used to hear people say, I need a mentor. And it was almost like they couldn't grow unless they had a mentor. Well, the way to have a mentor is to be a mentor. And the way, when I feel unmentored, shall we say, in a certain area of my life, I look around and I see, where can I mentor? Where can I make a difference? And that is, it's huge, because it goes both ways. And those mentors, the mentors that I have in my life, they are there literally, most of them are there for a lifetime. And they've become great friends, and we've helped each other through weaknesses and strengths. I'll go to London probably near the end of the year. And, one of my mentors is in their 90s, but they're there. And it's one of the few times that they get out. And another mentor that I had helped me through a brain injury and suffered a catastrophic health issue himself. And so now I'm sharing some of the same things with him and his wife that they shared with me. And so it goes full circle. But relationships are the most important thing in the world. People matter. And if you guard and treasure your mentorships, and you give them away, and you think about, what can I do to make a difference for my mentor, as your mentors also see in the same area about you, and how can I bring someone in that might be a little bit on the side or not really fitting in, how can I make a difference? Then you also become a mentor. So that's my encouragement today.
Thank you so much for that. That was so beautifully well said. I think you add a little bit of extra heart to the topic. All right, well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I won't talk too much because I know that we have a discussion that is going to be vibrant. My name is Eileen Davidson. I'm from Vancouver, BC, Canada. I'm part of the PxP steering committee as well as a para member. I know we have lots of acronyms, but Dawn has been doing a wonderful job putting that into the chat. I have another acronym for you. It's APAB, and that means I am an Arthritis Patient Advisory Board member with Arthritis Research Canada. And that is where I have received most of my mentoring, being a patient partner in research, obviously the topic we're here for. And I got involved in 2017, I started writing on the internet about my struggles living with rheumatoid arthritis, being a single mom, trying to navigate this difficult world living with chronic illness. And I was thirsty for knowledge. And I was also thirsty to give back to my community. So it started off with volunteering with organizations. My first mentor was actually a marketing and communications manager with the Arthritis Society, who really actually helped me understand what I could offer as a patient advocate, and also the big impact that arthritis has had on Canada. I knew the impact that it had on myself, but she helped me understand it on a wider variety. And then, I was really hungry for everything else. Then I joined the Patient Advisory Board, and there I have been very blessed as I've had a different kind of mentors, not just patients, but I've had researchers, staff members of Arthritis Research Canada, particularly like their liaison officer. I've had particularly amazing researchers that have mentored me into understanding the research process, as well as how to live and thrive better with my disease. And it's been like receiving medical care and in a long meeting, where instead of being in that short 15-minute appointments that we get when we go to see a doctor, but you can learn from these other clinicians. And so all of the information that I've learned from being mentored, I've been able to use through my social media channels. I'm a writer for Creaky Joints. I have my own blog, Chronic Eileen, and social media channels that have done kind of well, and I'm proud of that. But I would not have been able to do anything I have done without the people that have taught me along the way. So I think mentorship is really, really important. And I would love to now, Hetty, can we launch the Zoom polls? Now we're going to do a poll. And there's two questions. Have you been mentored? Or are you a mentor? So we're kind of curious to see what we have in the audience. Probably could have had both as a option, as I feel I have been mentored and have been a mentor, and I still, today I'm being mentored and I mentor other patients that come along. So I don't know which one to pick, but I'm going to go with have I been mentored, because I wouldn't have been able to do this without being mentored. Oh, and also telling me I can't vote. Give you a couple moments. Okay, here we go. We have a lot of mentors in this audience today. That's interesting. I was almost expecting more to have been mentored, but that's not what I expected. All right. I would like maybe some of you can put in the chat what being a mentor looks like to you and what being mentored looks like. All right. And now we're going to go and dive into the discussion. I'm going to first ask Anna, because I feel like I really relate with her, using the social media and kind of having similar experiences. But I'm going to ask you, what does being mentored look like to you?
To me, being mentored is having someone you can rely on, like navigating these spaces as a patient, whether it be just healthcare or research or just being a patient. There's no guidebook. There's everything you learn is by navigating through it yourself. And there's so many people who have similar lived experience, who have gone through these experiences that I'm just navigating now. And they have so much wisdom to offer. And they just do it from the goodness of their hearts. And it makes the world of a difference. I have been told to really be assertive and write down all my questions before going into a doctor's appointment. And had I not been told that by someone, I would feel a lot more flustered in my follow-up appointment with rheumatologists. And that's just being an advocate for myself in my personal health journey. But that's something I was told. And just having someone who can help you out when you've got questions in a judgment-free zone, that's what being mentored means to me.
So true. I'm going to ask the same question to Amy. Have you been mentored at all? And what does that look like to you?
Yes. Yes. At first I was like kind of shy to be mentored because I didn't want to admit like I needed anything. And then I thought like, oh my gosh, like I need so much. And I was overwhelmed, and it brought me like a lot of humility to see how people want to help. People want to help you more than you know. And so just because, you pick up on some deadbeat that's not helpful doesn't make you safe, plays mind games. There's people like that out there, but keep looking. They're not your mentor. And that mentors also need to know that they're loved and appreciated by you. And they need their boundaries respected as well, because they get tired. And if they have a kind of personality where they want to mentor, then they're probably giving of themselves all the time. And so even just having a mentee like give back, that's huge. And I've had the privilege of having mentors in my academic life, in my patient life, like in my personal life, all the way through. And there's one thing I can say, it's kind of like a cliche, but it's so true for me anyway. It's when the student is ready, the teacher or the mentor will appear. And it's like at that moment when you're at a crossroads, sometimes a mentor will just show up, and they might be there just for, it might be one conversation. It might be a lifetime. So stay open. And I think also to stay open the other way, to make sure that if mentoring opportunities are opening for you, don't say I'm not enough. Just do it. You're better than no one. That's what I told myself. Yep, I might not be ideal, but I'm better than no one. And honestly, can any of us say that for people to love us, care for us, accept us, make a safe space, would any of us really want to say no to that? So all you have to do to be a mentor is to have that kindness and offer what you have. And then also, if your expertise isn't enough, because like lots of times it's not. So like, Amy, can you tell me how to do this? I'm like, I have no clue. But then I think I know somebody who knows how to do that. And I find them and I join those people together. And then I look back, I still can't do whatever it is, but they're doing amazing work. And that's great because your mentors, your mentees, well, hopefully they'll grow to greater heights or whatever it is, do more than you, because they're building on your shoulders, just like you built on other people's shoulders. And so to remember, it's like that kind of economy. So that's what it is. Thank you.
You just said something that really sparked a comment or question. We have to show ways to appreciate mentors. And I think in just a few words, can you tell us some ways how us who are being mentored can show that appreciation to our mentors? Because what they're doing for us is so valuable, but it's hard to, put a dollar sign or anything on that.
Yeah, I read their work, find out what they're really interested in and where their soft spots are, and then find some information that you can share with them. Comment on it. Reach out, make them large, even on social media and like in other places. Say thank you, even when it's tough. And sometimes there'll be times in a mentor relationship where it's just not easy. Yeah. Because you're both going through like horrendous times, or something happens, a project goes wrong. So in that time, reaffirm their value, and that that they are who they are and you are, and that one way or another you'll make it together. And I think small gifts are good. If you think of somewhere to take them, do something for their family or their pets, if they have pets, bring a decoration, say good things about them to other people. And that's my list. Excellent
advice. I recently gave my mentors a bunch of my father's artwork. They're prints, but they got a few of them each. And that's a sentimental gift, just saying thank you and, showing a little side of myself to them. But I do have to move on the conversation to Janice. Can you talk about a little bit, what does being mentored look like to you?
I touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but I do think that I mentioned it in the chat, that you have to feel, I think a good mentor is somebody that you can ask the uncomfortable questions with, right? Mm-hmm. So, I've had somebody say to me, as we've discussed earlier, Angela mentioned in the first session today, that who she's worked with, she didn't look like the rest of the people she was working with, right? From a different background, different ethnicity, race, or different language. And so, because I've been very active in that space, to working with projects, to bring people onto projects from different backgrounds. And, basically in the Muslim community, we're a very diverse community. So I'm comfortable in that place and always have been. And, bringing those people in so people will feel comfortable asking me questions. And I also let them know, I wrote in the chat, something else I'll do is on a project, if you feel somebody's being very quiet and you're not sure if they're uncomfortable or just quiet, right? Just reach out to them and chat if you can. Sometimes you can't. Or send them an email, or if you have their phone number, you might want to call and have a chat with them about, how do you feel this is going? And so you can help mentor them on that. But I am asked many times, how can I do what you're doing? And, basically, I've been involved with research for 10 years. I do not have a college degree, but I had started a number of projects, community-based projects, before I became involved in research, and that was why they invited me onto the first research project. So sometimes it's very important you find your niche, and that will take a little bit of while, but what you like to do and take into account what you're good at, and your mentors can help to share with you what skills you have and what, you have to be gentle sharing with somebody perhaps where they can have some more improvement and help to lead them into trainings and such. So a good mentor is that will listen to you and be honest with you and give you some advice in a soft way that's respectable, that you can really take back and move forward and pass on to others. Thank you.
I agree. And, I've been hearing a couple of you say that when you start in your patient engagement and research process, it can be very intimidating, especially depending on your background. If you don't have an academic background, like I went to beauty school, I was an esthetician. So going into the research world was completely night and day what I was used to. I was terrified, lots of anxiety, but I now am able to present at research conferences thanks to those people that have, I don't want to say held my hand, but literally did hold my hand through the process, and the invaluable support that they gave me throughout that, and where it has made me at where I am today. And then also just knowing that I can make an impact and help the research too. And now, last but not least, Laurie, I would like for you to also go on a little bit. We've been kind of touchy. I was going to ask next is, what does being a mentor look like? But I think we've kind of already talked about that. So Laurie, I just want some words from you. I know you said some beautiful ones already, but what does being a mentor or being a mentee look like to you?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I agree with a lot that's being said. Really, it's about, I think it's, in terms of being thanked or that sort of thing, I think to me anyways, the experience is kind of the reward. And if I can see them pass it on or that sort of thing, maybe similar support to others, I think that would be probably the biggest thank you I can ever expect. But I think it's also just about like mutual respect. And I think they bring, the mentee bring as much to this as the mentor, right? I think it's, being a mentor is sort of being open and non-judgmental, but I think through that whole process, it like makes me grow as well. So I guess that's why in the end, to me, it feels like the reward in itself, because it makes me learn things that I probably never knew before, or sort of brings in new perspectives or gets me to think twice about behaving in a certain way. So it's not like some, paternalistic type of thing. It's just a relationship building kind of thing. And I think that is the reward in and of itself. So I think that's about all I have to add.
Very well said. Okay, so this is definitely one of my favorite questions, but is there a need for a formal mentorship program for patient partners? And are you aware of any? And what would you like to see in a mentor program? I'm going to start with Janice. I would like your perspective on that. Are you aware of any programs, or do you think there needs to be one? And what would you like to see in it?
I'm not aware of any that are specific in this area. I think a lot of the trainings or, classes, you might see a webinar about it or something. And some of the trainings and classes, they do touch on it, like mentioning a frentor or having, they might call it an advisor, having an advisor and not necessarily mentoring. But like I mentioned earlier, I recognize that this is a space because somebody brought it up over a year ago. And when I, reached out to a couple of the people afterwards, they're like, well, I don't know if I really have time. I said, should we really pursue this and, offer our services, because patients themselves aren't going to have money to pay for it. So it'd have to be pretty formalized to figure out how to do this unless you're, you plan on getting paid for it. But the truth is, I think all of us that are in this space of, I call it seasoned or weathered patient partners, I think most of us are willing to spend time with an individual. I've spent hours with a number of individuals, and I have had a number of people that I've been able to rely on that I, like we mentioned earlier, I will acknowledge to them what they have offered to me, and I feel comfortable asking them. So I'm planning on creating a small 5-step module about mentoring patient partners. So that more, would be a patient partner mentoring future patient partners. But first of all, you realize you have to get into definitions. What is a patient partner? It could be all this other. So it's not going to be anything really, spectacular, but I'll put it on my website. And I believe that we're planning on doing something like that with PxP next year. So thank you.
I am definitely looking forward to a program being built about this. just hinting that if any, buddy in that crowd has got the ability to start things rolling on that. Laurie and Anna, does Kappa have any programs that help mentor, or do you think this is something that is needed? And what do you think would be particularly very important to be on this?
Well, I just put in the chat, if anyone's interested, the next recruitment notice for our training program. And there is a mentorship component to it. And it's an area definitely that we need to improve upon, even from last time. Like, we did something, but, we're going to continue to evolve that. I think, it's really important that whatever training and things like that, it's based on the community. It's based on what patient partners and people with lived experience need and want. And so it will be more of a participatory type of project. So you'll be learning, but you'll also be helping us figure out what you want to learn. I also thought I'd know too, because I think Stuart Nichols is in the audience, but this is a collaborative project as well with the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute. So Stuart Nichols is the lead there for the Office of Patient Engagement and Research, and actually was the one, it was sort of funded through a project that Amy is leading, we're involved in. So it was actually Stuart, I'd like to say, that sort of approach and said, hey, maybe we should apply for something here, as a good example of patient researcher, I think, partnership and collaboration. So with that, I'll pass it to you, Anna. Sorry if you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think like the mentorship program that Kappa has is the training programs. They do have a component of mentorship that really are helpful. I do believe, as you've said, like there could be more that could be done for mentorship. But again, this is still kind of new. Things are still being figured out. I know as a para member myself, we have talked about the para modules also having some sort of mentorship aspect added to it to help, because again, having done the modules and getting a sense of what being involved in research is like, you kind of can feel lost after the fact, like, okay, so where do I go from now? How do I get involved with these groups? So having mentorship to learn how to navigate that would be really helpful. And I think having these training programs, or like the modules, having some sort of mentorship aspect, whether embedded in the programs or modules or like added onto the side as a separate thing, I think being connected with those would really be helpful for prospective and new patient partners, but also for seasoned ones as well, because they kind of had to figure out the whole system themselves. So I think any help for anyone would really make a difference.
So true. So we are getting some questions in the chat. They do kind of fit in with some of the questions that we have already kind of picked out for the topic, but some of these are very interesting. One that really stuck out to me that we don't have down is, and we're going to kind of jump to this one because it was interesting. Does the team think that mentorship whole thing is more based in the US and Canada rather than the UK or Europe? Does anybody have an opinion or knowledge about that?
I have the US, UK, India, anyway, a fairly wide base, and it is a genuine need everywhere. And it's being actively introduced in in unusual ways, through different cultures, but the relationship and the need for that relationship is the same. Like, I just saw a beautiful post, and it was a professor now. I just knew her when she was a student from Iran, and she's a woman in Iran, and there were 3 generations of mentors one mentored the other, mentored the other, mentored the other. And then she had mentees, and you saw it in a picture, and it's breathtakingly beautiful. So the most important thing that we can do as mentees is to pay it forward. And I love the cat. The cat brings something else. Mentees and mentors also can comfort. Goes both ways.
They definitely can. All right. Janice, how about you? Have you noticed any difference based off of the US, Canada, UK, or Europe when it comes to mentoring?
Well, it's very interesting. Even just at this conference, when I sent it out to I serve on the Evidence Global Commission, the Global Commission on Evidence, which is with McMaster University, and we work, is very broad. I mean, we work with people around there's a number of us citizen scientists. And so when I sent this to that group, I had an immediate response from somebody from Nigeria wanting to know, if there was more diversity. And I said, well, this is our first year, and next year there will be more in the steering committee, but there is diversity at our conference. And so I have actually mentored people around the world, but I think it's happening more and more. And when we talk about research globally, it's very different, where we might be so technical here in, US, Canada, Australia, UK. I do think we're more technical in some level. I mean, they're just as technical in evidence, but when, going out to a village in Africa is not the same as going to Seattle, Washington, right? I mean, it's just not. And so in epidemiology or public health, we all have the same goals as far as, the better health, prevention, and things like that. And it's really a good base. But to be a mentor, it's challenging because, their needs and their access to care is much, much different. So the research is at a different level. Also, I will say, in some of the countries, the developing countries, that they use like community health workers, what we would call them, or, individuals on the ground performing, some basic health at a level without a degree. And they are the people that really know what's going on, right? So sometimes they should be mentored. We can talk about that. Like I work with homeless here in Seattle. So I have a very, I focus on social determinants, social drivers of health. And so, and I, have mentored people who have served time in prison. And I feel it's very important to have those voices heard, because they aren't heard enough. And they are a subset of our communities that, they have great health disparities, and they deserve to be heard. So, somebody mentioned earlier, it's, meet them where they're at and just be there for them if they have questions. So like that one individual that wrote to me from Nigeria, I connected her with Dawn, right? So, sometimes as Amy had mentioned, if you don't know, feel free to, ask somebody else behind the scenes, are you willing to, talk to this person, and she could use some advice. Because I think I always advise people right off the bat to take some training to at least know some of the basic language and research. And I just want to add, somebody asked a very specific question in chat about Kentucky and Kansas and family. The best thing to do, I would recommend, is go to the PCORI.org website, and you can look up Kentucky and Kansas, and you can find people there who might be able to, you can find some subjects or projects there, and or in the ambassador site, that you might find somebody to assist you with there. Thank you.
And I believe, was it Anna or Laurie that need to answer the question? I can't remember which one I asked first. Great folk.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure if I have too much to add in terms of the internationality, I guess, of patient mentorship. I think all the points brought up, whether it be perhaps in country or cultural or community specific, awareness that needs to be sort of considered, I guess, within the sort of mentoring advice and that sort of thing that may happen. But I do think we do share a lot more in common than we realize. So I dare say I wouldn't write off that. It would just be a consideration, right? Just in terms of making sure that that mentoring happens in sort of an appropriate way that meets people where they are.
That is so true. We're all different, but
Mhm.
we all have a place. Okay. Anna, do you have anything that you want to chime in with this topic? We do have a great question in the chat otherwise.
We can go to the chat because I'll be honest, I am still like a newbie when it comes to being a patient partner. So I'm still kind of figuring it out here in Canada. I'm not sure what it's like internationally.
All right. Well, we do have a great question for people who are newer to, patient engagement. I do want to say my own personal experience as somebody who has had the pleasure of going to Canadian, American, and European rheumatology conferences, that from what I have noticed, Canada is leading the way in patient engagement, and that makes me really proud to be a Canadian. And that makes me think that we have the most mentors, and that's where I see the most people involved. And the arthritis community is trailblazers when it comes to patient engagement in research. Just my personal opinion there. And I'm really excited to now ask this question because this is a great one. How can patient partners ask more questions that are considered sensitive? For example, discussions around honorarium, gaps in knowledge, etc. In your experience, have you best answered these questions as a mentor? Nextly, organizations have also a feasibility bit to what they can and cannot do. How to best communicate that to patient partners? Would anybody like to go first on that question?
If no one else is going, I'll go. I think it's really important to be transparent and clear and gentle. So we can't do this because and give a real reason and wait for the discussion. I know this means a lot to you and I'm sensitive to that. But I don't know for sure how we can get past and name whatever it is. And then also ask the patient partner, the mentee, do you have ideas for how we could resolve this? Are there ways we could resolve this together? So that's my input, because otherwise the mentor is disappointed because they can't meet the need or frustrated. And then sometimes that frustration or disappointment comes across to the mentee as if it's a frustration or disappointment with them, when really it's just they're worn out with the system that they're in and they don't know what to do next either. So I think like that transparency and honesty is important.
So true. And I think it's really important for mentors to kind of have an idea of what uncomfortable questions might come up and have a way to answer it. How about you, Laurie? You've been a mentor to us newbies. What are some advice that you would have for people that might be kind of feeling anxious or nervous or scared or embarrassed about asking certain questions, from anywhere from honorariums to feeling like they don't understand it or they don't fit in, anything like that?
Yeah, I really just tried to provide as much information as I can to help them learn a little bit more. Sometimes I do work part-time as a knowledge broker. And I think this is where sometimes people with lived experience or patient partners who've gotten a lot of experience in navigating a lot of these often murky waters, let's be honest, there's no one size fits all, can kind of play a bit of a broker role or an in-between role, right? If they are allowed that role within research teams. to enable people to be supported. They, you know, I guess the question is, has the research team done what they can to enable those things to happen, right? So that would be my first question, right? And I often find the best advice I give myself as well as I give others is always asking, and a mentor told me this, just for the record, is to just ask a lot of questions. Like you really honestly don't know the answer. Like you might know the answer sort of in the back of your head, but just ask a lot of questions. Well, how about this? How about that? Right? So it kind of makes things, you know, less tense, perhaps, makes it more diplomatic, I suppose. But I mean, research, isn't it all about asking questions really at the end of the day? So at least you're kind of building on their already existing approaches to how they do things, right? They're inquisitive, curious people, right? I mean, I would say generally speaking, because that's the point of research, is to answer questions. So that's what I would personally say or have said, and what people have told me when I've been in situations where I'm just really not sure. But sometimes, you know, sometimes I ask the question and I get the answer I was hoping for, and then other times I don't. So you've got to deal with the possible positives, right? But you also need to prepare yourself that maybe, you know, there's some losses there. You're not gonna kind of get where you want with everyone. It's keeping up that momentum over time. I think that'll hopefully get us all somewhere better. You know, if we all start doing this, and I think we're sort of stronger as a community.
Absolutely. Touching base a little bit on that, you know, I've had to ask questions, and sometimes I've gotten really scared because I didn't want to seem stupid, especially when it comes to things that, you know, words that were never in my life before being in research. To me, the word abstract meant art. It did not mean a poster paper. It was like, what's that? So, you know, I just felt really bad about, you know, asking those questions at first. But then I kind of realized how important it was for me to be asking those questions, because everybody should be able to understand these questions. So even if you think that your question isn't, you know, it's hard to ask, or it may make you look kind of naive, it's so important, because there is going to be somebody else with the same question that might not be brave enough to ask it. Anna, I'm going to ask, do you have anything that you want to kind of touch base on that?
Yeah, sure. I feel like just from the perspective of a mentee, having a mentor create a sort of safe space makes a world of a difference, because I know for me, I do have a lot of questions, but I overthink those questions as well. I wonder whether I should be asking those questions, if they're quality questions, if these questions have been answered somewhere and I haven't realized it, and I don't want to seem unprepared, and I'll overthink it a lot. But having a mentor there who's let you know, hey, I'm here if you need anything, just let me know, it makes asking those questions a little easier. And in my experience, sometimes if I feel uncomfortable asking questions directly to researchers or like other involved parties, I talk to a mentor and I'm like, okay, so what should I do in this situation? And they've been so helpful. They're like, you can email me all your questions, like no matter how relevant or irrelevant you think they might be, and I can actually answer some of them for you and provide more information, or I can take those questions to the researchers for you. And that was really helpful for me, especially in my first couple of engagements, because I felt scared to, you know, ask these questions, but I knew that, you know, my mentor could do that for me. And that was so helpful. And it's come to a point now where I feel more comfortable asking those questions because of the support I had from my mentor and seeing how they would go about asking those questions. So kind of following their lead and learning from their example.
Feedback. Okay, so I hate to cut us all off, but we only have about 4 minutes left. So this is the warning sign to get your questions in if you have any. If not, I have 2 questions that we prepared that I really think would benefit us. And that is, and I'm going to ask you all to be very quick because we only have 4 minutes and there's a few of us. 1, what was the most surprising thing you learned in being a mentor or mentee? And what were the challenges and how did you overcome them? And you have like 30 seconds each to answer that. Amy, you go first.
The most surprising thing was that my mentors in the beginning, I learned they had needs too. And learning and negotiating that and meeting those needs makes a huge difference. That's all for me.
Janice, I felt like we haven't heard you talk for a little bit.
Okay, I was stumped by that, but I think the really the most surprising thing is that once you become involved as a patient partner, like it might be in Canada, UK, here in the US, you meet people and you click with certain people. If you have opportunities to meet each other, it might be virtually, might be in person, and then you build sort of a relationship. But you feel, what surprises me is we will text each other and ask questions sometimes very quickly and get a response, right? So we can rely, you learn very quickly who is able to answer your questions. And as I mentioned earlier, I think this is very important. One person doesn't know everything. So as you move through your research venture journey, I call it One Patient's Journey, was a PowerPoint I made. Different mentors came along at different points because I had certain questions, like now it might be about biostatistics and coding. So I just want to say that you will have different mentors as you go along. Thank you.
Laurie?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, as someone who's been mentored and been a mentor, I think it's that it doesn't have to be anything complicated. Often it's just like a natural extension to how I interact with people. And then I kind of get to know them better and lean on them for support in certain situations and that. So it doesn't have to be like this designated thing or a special program. Even the CAPA program is this there to kind of provide a bit of a framework for things. It's not there to, match people and force things. You know what I mean? But I guess one of the challenges really is just, I think the patient partner community is like overtaxed. I think we have a lot on the go. I think there's and so it's just a matter of having the time, having the energy, having some resources that we could support patient partners to mentor other patient partners, or as well with researchers, and that a spot is carved out in whatever new, research funding is going forward or whatever for that to happen. So.
And last but not least, Anna.
Something that surprised me as a mentee about the mentee-mentor relationship is that it's a relationship. There isn't this weird power imbalance, or it's not hierarchical, because I guess that's how I thought it was going in, but it really is just a relationship where you both learn from each other, and there's no one person who is like better than the other. It's just someone is more experienced and they share that experience. So that was very surprising for me, because I was kind of going into it like I have nothing to offer, but I learned that it's a two-way street.
It definitely is. So it is already time for us to end the session, but I know that all of us chatting could probably go on for a couple more hours, and there is much to learn about this. I'm sorry if there's anybody who had questions that didn't want to get answered or wanted to say more, but this is a topic that I think is very important to us patient advocates, and also probably for researchers, because the researchers want us patient advocates to feel comfortable, well prepared, and it's a collaboration between all of us. I'm going to hand it off over to Amy now to wrap everything up. But thank you so much for this discussion. And I look forward to working with you all again in the near future.
Wow, Eileen and the rest of the panel too. You did awesome. That was it was so beautiful. I really, really appreciated it.
I had phone calls and Amazon show up at the same time. So I was trying to not lose.
You were awesome.
Thank you.
I just want to thank all our speakers and our attendees today. And we've got a survey for you to fill out about your experience. This takes just a few minutes, but it will really help us plan for the PxP in 2024. We want to know what you really think. So it's okay if it's positive or if it's negative, because it'll help us to meet each other's needs. And Dawn and Hetty are going to put the link in the chat, and will pop up after you leave Zoom as part of the Zoom closing. So either way, please fill it out and leave us your comments. And we hope you'll be able to join us for day 2 tomorrow. And if you haven't registered and you got mixed up about all the links, don't feel alone. I did too. It took me a long time to get this together, but the 2 links should be in the chat now. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Continue to share on social media using our hashtag. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And thank you so much for coming today. And have a great night.